All right, good evening. My name is Bill Haddad. I'm the school board president. I want to welcome you to our special meeting of July 28th, 2020. Sorry for the delay. I'd like to call the meeting to order. May I please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, good evening. Sorry for the delay of starting our meeting tonight. Let me introduce our board. Our Vice President, Lauren Crosby, Mr. Tim Bazan, Mr. Wes Hood, Ms. Debbie New, Mrs. Kathleen Niles, Mrs. Tracy Quinn, our Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Sean Becerra, our Assistant Superintendent for Instruction and Programming, Mr. Clancy, and our Executive Director of Finance and Operations, Mr. Nick Panuccio. We also have our high school principal, Mr. Jay Altabello, our Robert Street principal, Mr. Faustino, on our call this evening. So I welcome the extra. This is a special meeting. We have a couple of presentations. The very first one here is our update on the reopening process and timeline that we are going to start with, and I will turn that over to the superintendent, Mr. Sean Becerra.
Okay, thank you. And at various points of the presentation, Mr. Panuccio and Mr. Clancy will be working with me on this. Obviously, what I'm going to be talking about tonight is this is something that we've been working on as a district now for weeks and in fact months, given that we have since our closure back in March. I want to point out from the outset, our reopening plan is a work in progress. It's going to continue to be throughout the rest of the summer and even into the new school year. So we're going to be talking about some key dates. One of the dates that everybody has been tuned into is July 31st. That's this Friday. That's the date that every district in New York State has to submit their reopening plans by. Some districts have already submitted that last week. Some have done it first couple of days this week. I believe regionally, most of the districts in our region will be releasing on Thursday or Friday. That's our intention. That's what we've indicated all along, that we're looking at Thursday or Friday as the release of our plan. So tonight we'll go through some of the things that we do know at this point. We'll have additional layers of detail, certainly when we put our plan out, and it'll continue to have more detail in the coming weeks. So why are we looking to put our plan out on Thursday or Friday when some districts did it as early as last week? Just to give people a refresher, the guidance from New York State significantly lagged behind many of the other states when it came to reopening. And in fact, our guidance document only came out about 2 weeks ago, actually less than 2 weeks ago. So that 145-page guidance document needed to be looked at. We needed to meet with representatives from the district. We've been meeting regularly. Thursday morning, I believe, is our 8th district reorganizational committee meeting, when we'll be going through what will probably be our final version of our initial plan. I'd like to thank all of the members of our committee. It's been a great committee. It's been a great process. There's been a cross-section of representatives from the district who sat at the table for those meetings. And I think by having a wide range of perspectives from the instructional side to transportation, facilities, food service, that's been very instrumental in us being able to put together what we believe is going to be a quality plan. We also want to thank the parents, students, staff members who participated in what has already been multiple surveys. We have had unbelievable participation in our surveys to this point, and Mr. Clancy is going to talk in a minute about what some of the information that we've gleaned from those surveys. But certainly having over 800, over 900 people participating in those surveys has given us critical information as we construct our plan. So our plan that we're going to show you pieces of our plan tonight, that is a combination of all of those things I've just talked about. The extensive feedback that we've received from students and families, the extensive work that our committees have put in, looking at what are the implications of different decisions, what's the ripple effect, how does one decision affect another portion of our operation. And at every step of the way, our priority has been really two things. One, we have to do right in terms of providing a healthy and safe environment for our students and our staff to work in. So for that reason, everything that we're going to talk about, everything is guided by Department of Health recommendations and CDC recommendations. Every single element of this has been incorporated into the plan. And the second part of our work is how do we provide quality instruction and learning opportunities for our students in very unconventional times. And so we've kicked around a lot of different scenarios. And tonight we wanted to unveil some of the at least foundational pieces of what our instructional plan would look like. And we know, for example, people want to know about what would our schedule potentially look like. So we want to give you some more insight into that tonight. We want to go to the next slide. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Clancy, who's going to give us a little bit of a recap of types of information we asked for and received with our surveys. I will point out we just finished the second round of survey information. That second survey concluded yesterday, and it had to do with as far as things like how many students would be riding buses to and from school, critical pieces of information such as that. We are going to be issuing an additional survey at the beginning of next week. And so that will be coming out, more information will be coming out, and there'll be additional chances throughout the remainder of the summer for people to give us feedback on some of those important things. So Mr. Clancy, do you want to walk us through what we've learned so far through the surveys?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Pacetta. So I'm going to talk tonight about the first survey that we administered a couple weeks ago to families. And the purpose of that survey was to try to collect some information about learning when our buildings were closed. So we wanted to know from specific groups about how that impacted them and about what went well with those processes and what we can work to improve. Knowing that we were going to be building this plan that we're presenting tonight, we wanted to make sure that we captured information from each of those groups and tried to continue what went well, but also tried to improve upon what didn't. So we targeted 3 specific groups. We had 3 different surveys that went out. One went out to parents and guardians. One went out to students. And then one went out to staff. And so I summarized information from those surveys in 3 separate slides for the board tonight. I want to acknowledge that we got, as Mr. Pacetta said, tremendous amount of feedback from all of these groups. Really valuable feedback, very helpful feedback, and quite honestly, more feedback than I've ever received in any other survey that we've administered in Canastota. So I'm very grateful for that. What I tried to do with some of our other team members is to try to look at all of that information and determine what kind of rises to the top. So what were some of the common themes from parents, from students, from staff members? So what I'm sharing with you tonight is that. It is what kind of rose to the top for each of those groups, and what was kind of gleaned as the most important or the most challenging or the most anything. Not to disregard other families and other students and other staff members, but I want to make sure that we captured what was most significant for each of those groups. So for parents and guardians, this was the question that I captured some of this information from. So the question in the survey was, what was the greatest challenge for you and your child during remote learning? So there were several things. These were the things that seemed to be general themes from the survey. So one struggle that a lot of parents shared was really consistently getting their children to actually do the work. I think anyone that's a parent knows that that is a challenge on a regular day without strange circumstances. So to get their kids to do schoolwork every day was certainly a challenge. One of the other elements that Mr. Becerra will speak to later that actually showed up in each of the surveys in terms of what was challenging was when there wasn't a consistent schedule for their children, or if the schedules were different. If I have a child at Peterborough Street and a child at Robert Street and maybe a child in the high school, and I'm working off of 3 different schedules because those schedules were kind of developed by individual classroom teachers or by grade levels or buildings, that was challenging for parents to try to navigate those schedules. Or sometimes if a schedule just didn't exist, was also challenging for families. Another element that I think we can all acknowledge is that parents who were trying to instruct their children from home, many of them were trying to reconcile that with their own work schedule. So, you know, they're an essential worker and they have a full day of work, and then they're coming home and doing, you know, essentially a full day of school work with their child after work is challenging, or trying to balance both of those things. Many parents shared that they were grateful for the support that the teachers provided in terms of the instruction, but there was also certainly a level of challenge for parents to understand the work that they were teaching, because in many cases the parents became teachers or at least teachers' assistants and struggled with supporting that. Due dates were a challenge, again, similar to the schedule. I think just knowing when things were due and being able to hold their children accountable, they were looking for specific due dates for things. There were varying expectations, similar to the schedule piece as well, varying expectations by buildings, grade levels, and sometimes teachers, which made parenting and, again, keeping their kids accountable and kind of on task challenging. And then one of the other things that was shared consistently was around communication from school buildings or from teachers. Again, if I'm a parent of multiple children, maybe in different grade levels or different buildings, I'm having to look at my email for one child, get a phone call for all of them, check an app for some of my kids and maybe another app for another one, and that presented some challenges to parents, which is certainly understandable. So the reason I'm sharing these is because, you know, again, looking ahead at building this plan, we wanted to make sure that we knew was what were the things that we want to try to make sure we correct or at least do better with our plan going into the school year. So from the student group, they had some really interesting feedback as well. And as you can see, their ideas were similar, but pretty straight to the point. So what they shared was that for many of them, it was hard for them to stay motivated. I think there were days and there were times where they were able to work, but consistently staying motivated to complete their work was a challenge. Learning on their own, not meaning that you know, their teachers kind of left them to learn on their own, but it was certainly a different kind of learning experience for them to learn from home than it was face-to-face. So in many cases, they were kind of trying to navigate some of the projects and activities on their own. which presented some challenges. When things were unclear to them, it was hard. They didn't, in school, when they're face-to-face, they could just go to the teacher or, stop in between periods, and they weren't able to do that. So that was a little hard for them. Lack of routine. I said that schedule was a common theme among all three groups, and students were definitely looking for routines. They were looking for deadlines. They were looking for schedule. So we're definitely wanting to address that. And then trying to balance their workload, because again, the pace was a little bit different for a lot of them. Staff members, again, you'll see some similar themes here. So what some staff members shared was that student participation wasn't always consistent. So their hope, of course, was that if they have a Google Meet, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week, that they're able to see all of their students in each of those meets, and they weren't able to do that. So our plan is addressing that fact to try to increase student participation and also hold students accountable for that. They certainly had to learn, teachers had to learn, and staff members had to learn technology very quickly. So we are spending some more time planning how we're going to make sure that teachers have a better understanding of technology going into the school year for what their needs are. A big part of teaching is getting feedback from your students and learning about what they know and what they can do as learners so that you can plan your next steps. And that was challenging for teachers when we were fully remote. So again, this is another element and another piece that we're looking at going into the school year. How can we do that in any kind of scenario that we're in? Scheduling, I've spoken about that. Again, a desire for a consistent schedule from all groups. And some staff members shared that the inconsistent student and parent contact was challenging. We had protocols in place to contact families at least weekly. And I think some staff members struggled finding that it was hard to get a hold of some. So again, really great feedback. And again, I hope you see the themes between these three groups. And the reason that we're talking about these surveys first is to just show that, certainly we value your feedback, but we also hope that you can see the connection between this feedback that we received and the plan that we're going to present next. Mr. Pacetta.
All right, we go into the next slide. Okay, so really building off of what Chris was just talking about, based on those survey responses, some clear priorities emerged in our work. And one was we felt it was very important for students K through 12 to have in-person learning. We felt that, even the older students, it was critical that they were able to have face-to-face communication with their teachers, obviously in a different environment than they're used to, obviously complying with, as we reference at the bottom bullet, CDC and Department of Health guidelines and requirements. But, Krista was talking about, feedback a little bit. We're talking about feedback and assessment. We felt that it was crucial that our students had the ability, and it gives our teachers the ability to, we felt, much more effectively be able to give that face-to-face feedback and to conduct assessments in person. So our plan that we will unveil at the end of this week will have an element where every student would have the ability, unless there's a good reason for them not to, which we'll talk about, and actually I can talk about now. There are cases where it makes sense where students should remain in a full remote learning format. We understand that. Those are some of the most common questions I've got when parents have reached out to me in the last few weeks. What if, there are concerns, for example, health-related concerns? Can we accommodate that? Yes. One of the most important things we did, one of the priorities was to have flexibility so that we could have structure. We could provide every student, if it makes sense, to have in-person interaction on multiple days every week. But we also had the ability to provide instruction remotely if the situation warranted. And furthermore, the guidance document from the state also encourages districts to provide additional assistance in cases where that makes sense. So we may have some students who are here almost or maybe every day of the week, depending on their specific circumstances. So we feel as if flexibility and being able to address the specific needs of our students was the centerpiece of our planning and was the key priority for us. And I already mentioned, certainly it goes without saying, adherence to the CDC and Department of Health guidance is that's incorporated with everything that we're going to be talking about today, and that anything that we're going to be talking about for the coming weeks. So some of the highlights, and again, our plan will be more specific in a couple of days with specific, as far as specific schedules. But we can tell you at this point that the plan will account for 2 days of in-person learning as a foundation to the program every week. Students will still be engaged when not in school in person. They will still be engaged in remote or blended learning on those opposite days. And very importantly, based on the feedback we got from parents, students, staff, kids need a schedule. Kids benefit from having a routine. And so having a specific schedule to follow, whether they're in person or they're at home, is something that is we think an enhancement from what we experienced in the spring. And so there will be a specific schedule that everybody will be able to follow. So at the K-6 level, obviously there were some allowances at the different levels that made sense. And one of the things that made sense for a variety of reasons was a heavy emphasis on core instruction during the in-person times with students. In that time, our class sizes would be reduced. Again, those situations would involve 6-foot distancing between students and their workstations. So we're talking a much smaller class size. Those students would be remote on certain days, and then they would be in person on other days. So essentially those classes, or what would have been a traditional class, would be split. We also had the ability to have one day each week that it could be whatever it needs to be for students. So for example, if a student was functioning well and benefiting from a remote format, that might be what they would be engaged in for that 5th day each week. There may be numerous circumstances where students really need more in-person access to their teachers. And so we would work with families to construct that schedule so that, you may have a student who would be in attendance in the school working directly with teachers on that flex day. And again, more details about what that day and when it is when we issue our report in a couple of days. The 7-12 level, same concept, in that they would be in attendance with half of students in person, half would be engaged remote. At the 7-12 level, instruction would continue each day. So in other words, we're not just standing still and the teacher would have to replicate one day's lesson and do it again the next day. We would be streaming and taping those lessons so that students are participating again in person one day. They're watching remotely. They would continue that instruction that the next day, and it could be in a flipped format where those kids flip spots as far as who's in school and who's remote. They also would have the 1 day per week of flexible instruction that would allow teachers and students to do some of the things that just need to be done in the best interest of each individual student. So there would be that ability to do either increased virtual or increased in-person instruction. As I mentioned earlier, at the heart of what we do is the safety protocols. That really that was the starting point for everything that we did. We knew certain things had to be in place no matter what instructional plan we came up with. So we will have in place daily screening protocols, not just for temperature checks, but for symptoms. There's multiple symptoms, as you know, beyond just the temperature readings. And so those protocols will be in place. Masks would be worn by students and staff in accordance with the Department of Health and CDC guidelines. Extensive signage, I think we have some pictures that we can and will continue to be showing you all around our facilities. We have reminders to anybody in our buildings that that we're complying with these standards. We all need reminders. We need to see it a lot. As kids are transitioning through the buildings, we'll have markers reminding them of distancing, actually having the marks as how far apart are you supposed to stay. And again, we will continue to populate our website and our plan with specific examples from our school with how we're complying with that. So you'll actually see our plan in action so that you can know that we're actually doing what we say we're going to do. You can see in some of those the hand sanitizing stations, they will be throughout the district at strategic places so that students and staff won't have to go any significant distance without being able to access sanitizing stations.
Okay, Sean, I'll take it over.
I was going to say, Nick, I don't want to steal your thunder. Why don't I turn it over to you for a minute?
Thank you very much, Mr. Bissett. I just talking about some of the cleaning protocols. One thing I wanted to mention is that there's a lot of guidance in the reopening plan from SCD. The one thing I will tell you that we will listen to the CDC, the Department of Health by the state and the county. Those will supersede any guidance that come from the plan because they work with the safety and cleaning protocols on a daily basis. So these are some of the more common practices. There will be a lot of cleaning protocols that will be put into place throughout the course of the plan that's being developed and when school reopens. The first one, if a student transitions from one room to another, we want you to ensure that all workstations are going to be clean and sanitized between the student uses, and the bathrooms will be cleaned frequently as well. One thing we're going to do is put cleaning kits in the classrooms. In the event that the teachers would like to clean off the desks or clean certain points in their class, we will provide masks, cloths, cleaners, and sanitizers and gloves in their classrooms. On a weekly basis, we're going to be doing our deep cleaning with the Clorox 360. Those will be done on our buses once a week, and those will be done on an as-needed basis at least once a week in the buildings in our district. As I said before, we're going to be cleaning high contact points throughout the day. Our cleaners are going to be doing a very good job figuring out the logistics of where the kids are going to be and where the staff is going to be as well. Buses are extremely important. We want to let you know that they're going to be clean and sanitized between each run. They will be all disinfected at the end of the day. And as I explained a couple minutes ago, The deep cleaning with Clorox 360 will be done at least once a week or as needed. Next, I just want to talk quickly about the nutrition and meal program. Once the schedule is set in place, we'll be able to finalize exactly how we're going to hand out meals to students. And I want you to know that breakfast is going to be prepared for weekly take-home only. We're not going to eat breakfast in school. So at the end of the day, when the student leaves, they will provide it with how many meals for breakfast they would need until they come back to school. The first bullet, they're going to be served in small group settings. They will be socially distanced when they eat. They do not have to have masks on when they eat. We all know that's virtually impossible. That's why they need to be socially distanced when eating. When students are here, we're going to serve them lunch in person. And the same protocol as breakfast. What we're going to do is we're going to send them lunch home as well as breakfast for any days they are not here in school. The last piece of this will be for remote students only. For the children that are going to be learning remote only, meals will be available for pickup for remote only students. One thing I do want to mention, sorry, Chris, is from March 18th up until August 31st, we were granted a waiver during this pandemic to feed every child in the district that was 18 and under a breakfast and a lunch. When we start school back up, we are going to go back to the normal school process, which is you will get your free and reduced applications for lunch. You will fill them out. Those will have free reduced lunch, and then there will be the paying students. Not every child in the district 18 and under will be allotted a breakfast and lunch. This will go back to just as we are in school at a normal time. So I'd like to turn it over for Mr. Becerra for the conclusion of the presentation.
All right, thanks, Nick. As you can see, it's pretty extensive, the amount of things that have to happen. We feel good about the plan that we're able to do the cleaning and disinfecting with the frequency that it needs to be implemented in our classrooms and throughout our facilities. We think that while this is certainly a challenge and it certainly has presented a lot of obstacles that we need to overcome, we also think this is a time where there are new opportunities that we can pursue. There are ways that we can still become better, and we don't want this to be an excuse of why are we improving. We want to continue to improve. We want to have high expectations, and this is just our reality. It's something we have to deal with. It's not an excuse. We need to be the best school that we can be. And so the things that we've been talking about, we're going to continue to talk about. We just might need to be a little more flexible and creative with the way we do it. So some of the things that we'll be talking about moving into the future would be, as the guidance document suggests from State Ed, that we continue to pursue community partnerships and flexible learning opportunities where that makes sense. We will continue to pursue opportunities for before and after school programming as we work with families. And we want to provide opportunities for parent support programming, because we know that there are frustrations that kids are on different schedules. We know that families are facing a lot of challenges. And so I would just remind everybody that what we're talking about tonight is literally just the starting point of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to continue throughout the rest of the summer leading into the new year to publicize and offer sessions where we can share more information with you, answer your questions, and try to really make sure that our plan is as well thought out and solid as possible. So, for example, over the course of the month of August leading up to the start of school, we will be doing sessions where we will pick a specific topic, like, what is the instructional schedule or instructional program at the elementary school level, or the secondary level, or do a session on just specifically what are we doing on the health and safety side, independent of instruction, those sorts of things. So we will provide you with topics in advance, put out a calendar, we will certainly continue to take your questions and incorporate those into our presentation. So again, this is just the beginning. Our plan is going to evolve as we get further into August and into the new year. So, we're looking forward to the challenge. We know our plan isn't perfect. We know that we're going to continue to learn. We know we're going to continue to ask for feedback from our community, and we'll try to use that and make us better. So the name of the game for us is going to be problem solvers and to continue to be flexible and continue to work as a team. And again, I would circle back around to some of my initial comments that we're really appreciative of the tremendous feedback, quality feedback we got from the community. And I'm very appreciative of the exceptional participation we got from our stakeholder groups to help us, construct our plan that we will be publishing this week. Any comments or questions at this point?
I just want to say I want to thank the whole entire reopening committee for all of the thought that went into this, the creative way, with the most important to make sure that our students had a learning environment, our staff was going to be safe along with that we can be successful at that, and also understand that there will be a lot of learning and see how this goes. And I absolutely appreciate the amount of effort that's going on to this. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Item number 2 is an overview of the 2020 summer school format. Sean, I'm not sure. Am I going right to Jay with this, or you got an opening? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'd just say quickly that summer school just obviously looks different this year for a lot of reasons. So we thought it'd be helpful. I knew there were some questions about participation in summer school and what it looks like. And so I asked Mr. Altabello to sort of give us an overview of what summer school is looking like for our students currently. So Mr. Altabello, can you take it away?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Becerra. So as Mr. Becerra had suggested, this year is completely different than what we've been experiencing in the past. Students are doing summer school at the high school level, grades 9 through 12, completely remotely. And we have about 25 kids currently in the summer school program. Unlike other years where students could take 2 classes at a time, students are able to take up to 4 classes if they in fact need to. And we do have a few of those kids who are taking four classes. It's been a bit of a challenge for some of these kids, as we have recently discovered. It's not that different than to some of the distance learning that was going on, where kids were struggling to stay motivated and keep engaged from day to day. So we're still dealing with some of those struggles. The registration process was much easier. Like I said, we could register the kids for 2 classes, and if they needed the 4, we can do the 4. And BOCES has been very flexible in allowing us to do that. Our guidance counselors are reaching out to the summer school teachers and administrators to find out, how our kids are doing, what's going on, and they've been responding quite timely, which has been nice. I know Dylan Gifford, our one of our counselors, has recently reached out and has been discussing and troubleshooting some students as far as getting them on board, getting them engaged, and making sure that they're finishing strong, because we're just a little bit more than halfway through the high school summer school program. So, I mean, in a nutshell, it's kind of in BOCES' hands, and in a nutshell, that's kind of where we're at with the high school program. And like I said, so we have about 25 kids in it. some of whom are taking about 4 classes each, most of whom are taking about 2 classes each. And so really it's just an engagement issue, making sure that they're staying engaged, making sure they're getting their work done, as they work through the summer school process. Any questions about the high school summer school program at this point?
Jay, do we know whether or not, for example, how many kids do we have, or do we have any kids who were supposed to have graduated and maybe taking summer school, and are those particular individuals being successful?
So I know of a few, I just off the top of my head. I don't have the exact number of seniors who are in. They are struggling to stay engaged. And I know our guidance counselors and the BOCES administrators, so I just saw some information on this, are reaching out to parents or reaching out to the kids. Unfortunately, we do have some kids who simply don't respond, regardless of how we're reaching out. And that's kind of was the case, during the remote learning. It's some kids did really, really well in the remote learning in this format, and other kids did not. And I think we're going to see that process, unfold as we continue to move forward. Some kids who did really well in school in person didn't do so well, remotely, and kind of vice versa. Some of the kids who did not do well in person thrived remotely. So we're going to see some of that occur. So it's not really much different than when we're all fully in person. But there's been a concerted effort to really reach out to those particular kids, especially the seniors, to say, hey, this is your last shot to graduate by August. Step up. So we're in the middle of all that right now. So we have, like I said, a couple off the top of my head, Mrs. New, that are struggling.
Are there any that are, we talk about our seniors because they didn't make it, but how many of them are even beyond that? For example, do we have, we have a couple, right? Or at least
you're getting
that are should have
Debbie.
graduated before, and I guess I'm just concerned. And again, obviously this is not the right year to basically have in-person learning and that kind of thing that for some probably is the most very necessary.
Yes, of course it is for some students. So you kind of broke up a little bit. So I think what you're asking is about like what it comes down to is it about our graduation rate and overall our grad.
No, if we've got more, and I don't even know. How many do we have kids, for example, who maybe were supposed to graduate last year? Are they enrolled? And, are they being, I guess I'm worried about them being successful. I don't know whether.
Right. So we don't have too many of the kids who are supposed to graduate last year in summer school right now. Most of those kids, if they stayed engaged with us and we're still, choosing to graduate, a lot of those have completed in January, which was good. So I can think of 2 off the top of my head that graduate in January. We still have a couple outliers. I'd have to look up the exact number. But for the most part, those who were supposed to graduate last year fulfilled a lot of the requirements either by January or by June. So we're not going to see a lot of those kids in our summer school right now from the prior year. We did not have, our graduation rate was pretty solid this year. And so we do not have a ton of seniors who needed to engage in summer school. But as I had mentioned, we did have a few, and we did have a couple of those few that are struggling to maintain and to kind of finish strong and get through. But we're working on touching base with them and trying to keep them engaged.
Jay, what's our policy as far as putting the summer school grade on the transcript? Is it just the student goes to summer school, gets the grade, and that grade now overruns the at-home grade? Or is it, because we've had this discussion in the past, and I think we had a policy, and I'm not sure what it is right now.
That is my understanding. If they pass summer school, that does become their grade, as they do if they do pass everything, they do become August graduates if they're seniors. So, and those August graduates count towards our June cohort rate
I'm not talking, okay, but I'm not just talking about the seniors. I'm talking about, let's say you have a kid, I'm assuming that, let's say a student who may have failed global, may be taking global studies this summer.
Yep.
So if that student did not do any work throughout the entire year and went to summer school and gets a 90, is, this is the discussion we used to have. Is it fair for the students who had to work throughout the year and only getting an 80 or a 70, and yet their 90 supplants the failing grade? I mean, we came up with, I believe we had some kind of I don't know if it was 50-50 or 70-30. I'm not sure what the actual breakdown was, but I know as a staff we talked about that when I was doing summer school, because we wanted to make it fair for those kids who worked hard throughout the year but may not have succeeded, with the B's or the A's, etc.
Well, I think that's a good conversation to continue. That has not been part of the conversation since I've been in the district. And as far as I know, all grades do go on transcripts. And so, I mean, I think you make a good point, Mr. Bazan. One of the arguments against counting the grades is that it does become a prioritized curriculum. And so, they're giving the kids the basic and essentials of that particular curriculum in order to pass the Regents exam in August. So the argument could be made that if they're passing the Regents exam, that is sufficient enough. But I do think your point is well taken, that, some of the kids who haven't been working as hard or weren't working as hard during the school year do this shortened block of time in summer school, get 80s and 90s, and then, reap the benefits of that short curriculum. I think that's a conversation probably to continue if we wanted to look at that. But that is not a conversation that I have had since I've been in the district.
Okay, and I just have one other question. As far as summer school itself, I know this was a strange year and all, but how many students, I guess we've asked to be, educated about the junior high, especially the 7-8 failure rate. And we did not get any information this year, understandably so, perhaps. But I guess my question is, how many are involved in the 7-8 summer school? And more importantly, are we still offering differentiated instruction classes for the new staff that has been hired, so that they are, working with the same idea that, sometimes we just need to differentiate our instruction to maybe help those students so that they are not failing at however many we have failing. So are we still offering those programs at BOCES for the new staff who has never taken the differentiate? Because that was a big investment that this district made years ago.
Are you referring to like the APL strategies and so forth, Mr. Bazan?
But it was also called differentiated instruction. So I'm not sure if it's the APL. There was a BOCES program that everybody in our district had to go through. And I mean, we sent some years like, 30, 40 people at a time, and that impacted again on, substitutes and different things like that. So, but I mean, it was an investment that the district made. And I'm just wondering, like all kinds of programs, did it go by the wayside, or are we still offering it? Do we need to offer it? Is it supplanted by something different? I don't know. I'm just asking.
So yes, those things are offered sporadically throughout each school year, and in fact, we do have a lot of our teachers taking advantage of those offerings that are presented by BOCES. BOCES has done a really good job putting out differentiated, I don't want to abuse that word, but differentiated offerings. Some of which include differentiation in the classroom, how to use the Google platform, and they've been doing a pretty good job keeping abreast of some of the current issues that teachers are facing right now. And so what I do is when I receive those, I get those out to the teachers, and I'll say, hey, check out this option, and anybody interested, let us know, and then we figure out the registration and then the subbing issue. Sometimes if
Okay,
we have,
but what about with those? I like that idea, but if you don't have the interest from a teacher that may need it, I mean, at this point, and I can't remember whether it was Fred Bragan or I think it was Fred Bragan who started this, where everybody had to go to the program. So we were all consistent K-12. It was really a good program to get everybody on board on the same page with some program.
yeah.
And I'm just wondering, obviously it sounds like it's not there anymore.
Well, some of it is, like, for example, APL was a concerted effort by the district over the past several years since I've been here anyway, to get all our new staff integrated with the APL structure, which is rooted in research-based practices. So most of our new staff has gone to that. We've started to integrate some of the veteran staff into that as well when we can. Certainly cost becomes an issue with that. And in addition, if there's a targeted professional development that I think a teacher should go to, I have asked specific teachers to go to those particular professional development opportunities.
Well, that's good to hear. Thank you. Okay,
And as far as a district-wide approach, that is something that we talk about periodically and talk about. Okay, are we what is our initiative? And if we're gonna have initiative A, we need to target some professional development around it. So those are things that
let me address that, because that's the biggest thing that really we need to do is, and I've talked about that at a lot of points, is district consistency, vertical alignment and consistency. What are we doing consistently and pervasively on a regular basis throughout the district? So, last year, for example, when I started talking to grade levels and departments, that was one of the things that was identified. And we spoke about that to the board, that there was I think an acknowledged need that we needed to know what we were doing, how kids were moving through our school. And so what things needed to be done consistently, as Mr. Bazan is alluding to. What things should everybody who works at Canastota be familiar with? And for example, I use the example of something that we started digging into last year, still are working on it, but we just lost the ability to interact as we normally would have. Student intervention, RTI, right? Response to intervention. How do we provide layers of intervention to students? That's something that we're in the process of, and as we move into this year, have already laid the foundation as an administrative team to work consistently through the district to say, these are practices, these are strategies, these are interventions that we're going to use across the district. That will be a focus of professional development and the expectations, really, of how we're operating as a district.
It's very good to hear. That is. My only other question, Jay, is going back to that 7-8, because it's all started with that one year, and I think you may have been principal at the time, I'm not sure, when I think it was Mr. Dwyer came and presented his need for a summer school for 7 and 8, and we had that discussion in the board, and we tabled it because we wanted to know what exactly was being done. As Mr. Bissett is saying, what interventions had the teachers taken, had the parents been contacted, etc. We wanted more information. So I guess my question is, I just heard this year that 7th and 8th grade students were taking summer school. I mean, is it a large number? Is it like how many are involved in that summer school?
Okay, so the summer school for the junior high has not started yet, and initially we were looking to do it in-house, which we kind of still are, but now it's associated with the BOCES LEAP program. So now we have which Sean Dwyer is now running, and we have approximately 20 students involved with the junior high summer school, and we have about 4 core teachers for all the 7th and 8th grade, and we have 1 special ed teacher for all of them. We have another teacher who's on special assignment, if and when we need her. And we have staff teaching in small groups, kind of making an effort to focus, the 4 core learning standards. So, and then there are some requirements that the teachers need to follow as far as making contact with other students each day, either in class or one-on-one via phone, Google Meet sessions, and so forth. As far as like what happened prior to that, I'm kind of proud of some of the work that our teachers have really begun doing as far as reaching out and providing opportunities, and with those opportunities, interventions to really get kids from point A to point B. During the past couple months, each teacher's reached out to 10 kids every week. And, Mr. Kennedy has done a good job kind of overseeing that. And, I think it was tough for some because I think they were so swamped, but we've done a really good job trying to reach each kid, ask, how are things going? Do you need anything? Or, hey, you need to step it up here. This matters, this counts, and trying to get them to understand, the importance of what we're doing and why. The opportunities that we provide, in my opinion, when we end up offering 10th period, offering, teachers offer one on their lunches and study halls, to really help kids grasp the content and to really help them move them along. So I'm comfortable in saying that our teachers have done a really good job, really stepping up and trying to get kids to where they need to be.
Okay, so that's good to hear. And again, now next year, don't get mad if we ask, or if I ask, how many of those kids who took summer school in 7th and 8th grade now are still taking summer school in 8th and 9th grade? Because
Sure.
I'm hoping that with this program, that everybody will be working very hard to make sure that these students understand it's far better to do the work during the year than to wait again over the summer. But time will tell.
Absolutely. And I think that's always the goal. I mean, I don't want kids in summer school, right? And in fact, well, I had a conversation with a colleague from another district, and we were talking about summer school and talking about what do we call it? Do you call it extended school year? Do you call it summer school? And we were talking about whether or not you put a positive spin on it, and school itself should be positive, but we don't. I personally, this is just my own perspective here. I don't want kids thinking summer school is a good option, because it's not a good option. We want kids engaged during the school year. We want kids, we want kids to pass during the school year. And so, not to get them to summer school is always the option, and to not bring them back to summer school is always an option. And so, yes, I always want to put a positive spin on education and on school, but I don't necessarily want to put a positive name or a positive spin on summer school. Okay. Right. We don't want kids in summer school because we want them to be successful during the school year. Now, if we're going to do an extended year program, to me, that's a completely different thing. When we do an extended year program, we're talking about enrichment opportunities, and we're talking about extended supports and additional opportunities. But when we talk about summer school is something that we should be trying to avoid, and because we want kids to be successful during the school year, not during the summer.
And I think that's, again, excellent. Just keep in mind, though, what I initially told you about the grading, because when we went to that kind of system, because kids were getting those 90s in summer school, and it replaced their failing grade on the report card. So now you have this mind frame from some that, hey, I only have to work for 30 days.
Right.
So be it that it might be a double session, but 60 hours versus 180 or whatever. So you got to be careful with the grading, because sometimes that backfired, and the kids wanted to go to summer school because it's far easier. And then they become pigs in the classroom and whatever they're not engaged in. They can cause disruptions, etc. Just something to think about.
Well, I'm gonna help you out.
I'm aware that several years ago I know some of the guidance counselors took a look at like ranking and so on and so forth as it related to kids in summer school and kids who did not attend summer school. And to my knowledge, it did not have an impact on like ranking and so on and so forth. Like, in other words, because they went to summer school, they got a better grade in their transcript. That kind of worked itself out, and they didn't like move like up in rank and stuff like that.
Yeah, but to be honest here, that can well be true. And a lot of your kids who are going to summer school are not the kids who are worried about ranking. working, but the word travels. And the idea is, you know what? You struggle all year long and you get your 75. Look at me. I go to summer school and I get my 90.
I think we have to put this in perspective, though, because I've heard that argument for years in places, and I don't know. I think it's a little bit of a stretch. Could it happen? Can some? Yeah, but most kids that are wired to, I think it's a flawed theory to say I have to be in school anyways, right? Or we're gonna be contacting people. You have to be in school. I don't know under whose reckoning it would make sense to have to sit through school anyways, even if you had the ability to pass the first time, but then say, okay, now I'm going to put myself through summer school, because quite honestly and personally, I couldn't have thought of anything worse as a kid than having to do summer school. So I wouldn't have looked at that as a bargain. And I really don't think when push comes to shove, many kids are going to look at that and say, geez, I'm just going to wait for summer school and then I'm going to inflate my grade. Most likely, if somebody has that attitude, they're probably not really worried about their grade, quite frankly, that much.
I mean, I don't think that. Now, one more question, and I hope this is reflective. You said 20 students in 7-8. Is that all we have is failures in 7-8?
No, I wish. No, there are some more. It wasn't like we haven't made summer school for 7th and 8th grade a requirement. Okay, right. And by doing so right now we're making it an expectation. But some parents did opt out of going to summer school, and depending upon what they fail, for example, if they failed all 4 cores, then we need to consider retention. Okay, but when you look at the research about retention, all the research indicates that you don't hold kids back at the middle level because they're more likely to fail when they reach the high school level. Right. So we have had a lot of discussion and a lot of debate about that, right? So that's something that, I mean, I'm happy to have that discussion and even lead a committee on that, because that's something that I've been dealing with since I became an administrator 14 years ago. That's always come up.
But I think, Jay, this was an attempt because there wasn't a regional summer school.
Correct.
This was an attempt to at least provide something for our students, which we were able to attach what we already had planned on creating this expanded LEAP program, yes, to extend it. And so we were able to, working with BOCES, create extend the LEAP program to 7th and 8th. So while it's not everybody we would like to have had as part of it, it's beyond what was actually regionally available. And we figured it made sense to try to put that together, since we knew some kids were struggling with the remote environment. As far as some of the points Tim was making, I think about, how are we monitoring how kids are doing? I think we're starting to do that. And I think we were going through the growing pains of that last year when we talked about that at some of the board meetings, of how are we were tracking the data, right, of how many kids were failing a class or multiple classes, and looking at what are the interventions we were putting in place. And we're wrestling around with that. What's the best, in what form do you want us to sort of lay that out? And I think the idea is we're going to continue that. Part of our issue was last year is we were starting to move towards that, starting to, get, I think, more in line with, what the expectations were. Then we had the shutdown. Then we didn't have access to kids. That's why we think it's so important that in order to do some of the things you're asking about, we felt like that having in-person contact with kids was crucial. That's an advantage that we'll have with those 7 through 12 kids that we didn't have since March, which is we can have them at least a couple of days a week, if not more, face-to-face, where we can be working with those kids and carrying out specific plans to provide intervention for them. So that, as everybody's been saying, we'd like to not need summer school for many kids. So that can be part of our tracking. That's part of what we intend to continue to track and provide data and information on. And internally, something that we'll continue to use to shape how we intervene with students.
Yeah, and in my experience with summer schools, that kids don't want to go. They'd rather be, hanging out at the beach with their friends and, hanging out with their buddies and stuff like that. And so, my experience has always been that, like, when a kid goes to summer school, if they do well, then good for them, because those are the kids that need to do well and hopefully feel some sort of accomplishment so they can move on to the next grade. So, the other kids, I think, try to avoid summer school as much as possible so they can have their summer.
Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Altobello. Thank you very much for that. We'll continue to we'll look for an update here as how well we did, and after probably later September, we'll kind of look probably for a status report from you on summer school as it wind up. So,
sounds great.
Anybody else on this? All right. We're going to move on the agenda. C, new business. This is a consent agenda 1 through 7. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
I think, Nick, you good? Just tell me if you don't. You got them both? Okay. Discussion. Quickly, there's 7 items on here. Is an MOA with CTA, district-wide safety plan, agreement with Whole Me, UCP agreement, Central Association of the Blind agreement, Jessica Fox summer administrative internship, and the attached resolution on reopening. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Personnel recommendations. All appointments are pending clearance on fingerprinting. Resignations and retirement. Resolved upon the recommendation of superintendent of schools, the board does hereby accept Francis Anson's letter of resignation as a food service helper effective July 1st, 2020. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Permanent positions. And we got 4 of these tonight. Resolved that Rebecca Schwartz is hereby appointed on a probationary basis as an elementary teacher in the tenure area of elementary, with the understanding the named individual does hold a New York State certification appropriate to or required for that position. The probationary appointment shall commence on September 1st, 2020, and the probationary appointment shall expire on September 1st, 2023, and that the named individual to be eligible for the appointment on tenure upon expiration of the probationary period, it shall be necessary but not sufficient that the individual has received an annual professional performance review rating of either effective or highly effective in 3 of the 4 years of the probationary service and has not received an annual professional performance rating of ineffective in the final year of the probationary appointment, as based on ratings derived in compliance with educational law section 3012-D at the salary of $45,519 at step 2 with bachelor's plus 6 hours. May I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. B, resolved that Natalie Lamperson is hereby appointed on a probationary period as an elementary teacher in the tenure area of elementary, with the understanding that the named individual does hold the New York State certification appropriate to or required for that position. That the probationary appointment shall commence on September 1st, 2020, that the probationary appointment shall expire on September 1st, 2023, and that the named individual to be eligible for the appointment on tenure upon expiration of the probationary period, it shall be necessary but not sufficient that the individual has received an annual professional performance rating of either effective or highly effective in 3 of the 4 years of the probationary service, has not received an annual professional performance rating of ineffective in the final year of the probationary appointment, is based on the ratings derived in compliance with educational law section 3012-D at a salary of $59,096. Step 13, Bachelor's, master's plus 42 hours. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Carried. C, resolved that Ellen Burns is hereby appointed as a probationary basis as a literacy coach in the tenure area of reading, with the understanding that the named individual does hold a New York State certification appropriate to or required for that position, and the probationary appointment shall commence on July 29th, 2020, that the probationary appointment shall expire on July 29th, 2023, and that the named individual to be eligible for the appointment on tenure upon expiration of the probationary period, it shall be necessary but not sufficient that the individual has received an annual professional performance rating of either effective or highly effective in 3 of the 4 years of the probationary service, and has not received an annual professional performance rating of ineffective in the final year of the probationary appointment, is based on the ratings derived in compliance with educational law, section 3012-D, at a salary of $73,223. Step 25, bachelor's, master's, whatever CAS is, plus 78 hours. May I have a motion?
Advanced study.
What is that? Advanced study?
Yep.
Thank you. I don't normally get those. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. D, resolved that Michelle Rodriguez Mendez is hereby appointed on a probationary basis as a Spanish teacher in the tenure area of foreign language, with the understanding that the named individual does hold the New York State certification appropriate to or required for that position, that the probationary appointment shall commence on September 1st, 2020, that the probationary appointment shall expire on September 1st, 2024, and that the named individual be eligible for appointment on tenure upon expiration of the probationary period, and it shall be necessary, but not sufficient, that the individual has received an annual professional performance review rating of either effective or highly effective in 3 of the 4 years of the probationary service, and has not received an annual professional performance rating of ineffective in the final year of the probationary appointment, is based on ratings derived from the educational law 3012-D at a salary of $45,136. Is a step 3 with bachelor's. May I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
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 All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Congratulations to all our new employees. All right, E, this is the other category on our agenda. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board does hereby approve Ashley Karp's request for maternity leave on or about September 6, 2020 through November 27, 2020, with an unpaid leave after her disability period. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Carried. Our future dates is August 11th, 2020 is a regular Board of Educational meeting at 6:30. Only discussion on that. Are we at a point where we can consider in person for that meeting?
Don't we have to wait for guidance to come out? Didn't the executive order hold it till like August 4th or 5th or 6th or something like that?
Yeah, and there hasn't been any nothing extending it, so it would have to come out pretty quickly. So at this point, we could move to in person. Again, depending on whether or not the governor throws us a curveball.
Okay, well, let's Is there anybody opposed to that on the board? Is that going to cause a problem?
I'm fine with that.
All right, we'll see when we get there. Hopefully, we can get in person, and I can see your smiling faces live. The only other thing I wanted to know, if you didn't see the paper, Debbie sent this out to the board also. Our foundation, our Engaged Canastota Educational Fund, press release was in the paper on Sunday. That's moving along very well with some very dedicated community members who are engaged in that, tying up some loose ends and some documents. I think we're hopefully going to be done this week on that, and it is moving well.
Now, Bill, there was an announcement that there would be an academic meeting on the 3rd. Do we want to say that there won't, do we want to put out there that there won't be one? I mean, because I think we, you guys, everybody's been working so hard on, quote, the academic piece. I don't think we can answer any more questions, right?
Well, I think, what I was thinking is, could we, we talked about doing these informational sessions for people around specific topics, so do we highlight, K-6 programming or 712, or do we do something about, the safety protocols? I think we could do that. If we want to do that under the umbrella of the academic committee, then we could put out a, sort of a schedule between now and when school starts.
I would think that'd be good. Tracy, what do you think?
Would you want me to contact the members then, the academic committee, and send you a proposal and with some dates, we can match dates, and if we're good with it, then we can get that out to the public?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I'm concerned about some of the what calendar are you looking at to see that? Because I'm looking at the district calendar.
No, it was on something that there was going to be an academic meeting on the 3rd, but but I think it was way back when, Bill. I mean, it was before. I think that.
I think it was on the district.
The things we earmarked was parent support groups. So that might be something worth exploring with the academic committee too.
Yeah. Plus the reorganization meeting established the academic committee. So I don't think anything happened after the reorganization meeting.
No, it was before. It was long before that, Nick.
Well, I don't know if it could if the reorg meeting established the committee.
Okay.
All I'm saying.
I think these were residual dates from this past school year. So it was the first Monday every other month or something.
Right.
So when you guys establish your new calendar dates, I can put those on the calendar, but I think that's where that came from.
All right. Well, that's what I was asking, because if it's my confusion on the calendar that I created when we did all the committee stuff where we're kind of sitting on the dates, I will delete all of those if that's causing confusion to once we reestablish all the committee dates that we're going to have going forward.
Okay.
That's why I wasn't sure where Debbie saw that.
So I'll remove those from the calendar and await whatever new dates you guys set for your committee. Is that?
So we're not meeting on August 3rd.
You can.
Well, I don't know. Are we or aren't? I'm asking.
No, it's fine. Well, Tracy's right. Right. Tracy's
the chairman, chairperson.
Chairperson. I'm sorry. I don't know if you're talking or not, Trace, because I can't hear you.
Yeah, I can do August 3rd if we need to.
So why don't we establish that? If we're good with that, we go with an August 3rd academic committee. If you guys are all up for it and are available.
But somebody will advertise it for us so parents know.
It'll be like a Google Meet or in person.
I don't know.
I don't think we could meet in Zoom.
Yeah, it would have to be virtual. But Sean, did you want to have some time to put together what that was going to look like? Like around this academic plan? Is Monday?
Well, I was just going to say we could put together a schedule where we might have several meetings over the course of the next few weeks, where we could use those meetings as a relaunch, for this year's committee, if that makes sense.
Well, and we put August 3rd out there, and I'll just tell you that, I didn't realize. Christian brought up a good point. This is Monday.
Yeah, it's Monday.
Maybe you want to go to the 10th.
Yeah. I'm fine with it.
Does the 10th work?
If it's virtual, is there any way for parents? Do parents have to submit things, or is there any way that they can get on, Chris, or not?
Well, if we did the 10th, we could potentially, we'd have to talk about that too. We could potentially start doing some things in person. We just would have to control the number of people.
We aren't going to have 25 people there.
Well, we can go more than that now too. So we could do in person if we wanted to.
That may be better, I think.
What's that?
I think that may be better to have it in person.
In person?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so we want to shoot for the 10th.
Sure.
Normal time, which is, I think 5:30.
5:30.
Okay. Sounds good.
It's while we're doing this, it might not be a bad idea for the facilities and audit to meet at 4:30 and 5:30 prior to the 11th board meeting, so we can just get a quick update on where we stand with SCD on the capital project, as well as any news you may have, Nick, in regards to either the gift or the taking from our loyal government. If that's all right with you guys. That way we can report back to the public at our general session at the board meeting.
What day did you say was?
The 11th.
So policy
I was
committee.
thinking the 11th, the day of the board.
Policy is currently scheduled for that
What's
day.
that?
Policy committee. I'm just looking at my old Google Calendar from before.
Yep.
It's policy day, so I don't know if
What-
we're going to change the policy committee.
Right. What time is the policy? That's all, because we can
5:30.
do the facilities at 1. So, and you're on the audit, so we could do the audit at the 4:30 and do the facilities at 5:30 if that worked.
Policy's at 5:30.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
you-
we're
oh,
not.
I see what you're
Right. So do
I
the
could
audit
go
at 4.
Gotcha. I gotcha. But I don't know. Are we meeting, Nick, at 4? Are we doing policy committee on the 11th?
I know that there's dates on there set last year, but to me, I thought we were going to regroup because they were set up last year, but you can't have a committee meeting set up when it wasn't reorganized set up. So I'm a little confused, but whatever you guys want to do. I just think it's 2 years, and they shouldn't have been. It should go from calendar year up to June 30th. And then at the reorganization meeting, once you reset your committee meetings, then you need to get
And you
together
pick the
and
dates.
set the meetings. So, but whatever you're willing to do, I'll
Right.
put it on the calendar. You tell me.
Facilities, if we're looking at what's the most timely, I mean, I think probably facilities and finance are probably a little more timely than policy is. And we can do all of them, but if we're looking at trying to match something to a board meeting date, given the fact that the capital project is now moving through the approval phase and that we're looking at so many things impacting how the facilities are used. And on the finance side, as Wes said, we might be, who knows what's happening with what we're having taken away or whatever.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter to me. I just want to make sure I know what the schedule is, just because I'm on several of these, so I can be in attendance.
I'm fine taking policy off. I think just with myself and Kathleen both being on audit and facilities, if we just focus on audit and facilities for the 11th meeting, and then myself, Tim, and Kathleen can figure out when to calendar the next meeting after that.
All right, so do we want to go 4:30 and 5:30 as Wes had suggested? Good.
I love Spectrum.
Okay, we'll do that, and we'll work on getting
Thank you.
well, I was going to say get the invitations out, but so we're going to do that, and we'll be in person. Is that right? We're going to do both of those in person?
Yeah,
Where-
should be able to.
Okay.
Where will the academic committee meet?
Auditorium.
Or the forum room?
Probably easiest to use the auditorium now. We've been using that for meetings just because you can space out so much. So
All right,
for now, anyways.
that's fine.
I'm sorry, I lost where we got to. What did we decide for audit and facilities?
It sounds like on August 11th at 4:30, we'll do facilities, and on August 11th at 5:30, we will do finance committee.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. In person.
Unless there's a new executive order.
Yeah, all subject to all this. Yes, all subject to.
Just remember, 97 days to the next election.
Tim Bazan, you're not supposed to go there.
No, Bill's election is before then.
Okay. Anything else from anybody?
I'm at home. Why?
I can't see him.
All right. Is there anything else?
Show you the text message I sent her.
No.
I
Okay.
was
All
watching
right.
your board meeting.
Oh, good.
Okay. It's still on. It's still on.
Oh, Don?
Yeah.
It's still on. Yeah.
It went.
Okay. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Good night. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night. Thank
Good
you.
Good night.
How do we get this out of here?
Bye, all.
Good night.